Hi everyone, welcome to GoLocal Live at the Rhode Island State House. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in this Thursday afternoon. I'd like to welcome a familiar face, Speaker of the House Nicholas Mattiello.
Hi Kate.
Thanks for
nice
coming
to be with
in
you.
today as you are looking towards break next week, but it has been a busy session to date. And let's start with what has been a hot topic issue this week specifically, and this pertains to the Firefighter Overtime bill. Now, there's been some opposition saying that the costs associated with it will be a lot for cities and towns to take on. Tell us about your perspective on the matter.
You notice there's not a lot of detail given when the mayors are saying there's going to be cost. There is not going to be cost. We believe that for 36 out of 39 cities and towns, there will be no cost because they're on a 4-platoon system. For those towns that have gone to a 3-platoon system, which holds a firefighter over up to 56 hours, they're going to their third day at the firehouse. Unless they go to a 4-platoon system, there will be cost associated with that. And from my point of view, and what I've learned over the last several years, it's a quality of life issue, it's a fairness issue, it's a safety issue. Firefighters should not be forced to work 56 hours. Surely cities and towns, by imposing oppressive work schedules, probably could save money, but that's not how we measure what we're supposed to do as a society. Everybody else in society gets overtime after 40 hours. Firefighters are going to be eligible for overtime after 42 hours. But most importantly, Kate, it's not designed to generate overtime. What it's designed to do is discourage 3-platoon systems, which are very bad for families, for children. Firefighters sometimes don't see their spouses, their children for several days when there's a 3-platoon system. There's actually social cost associated with that the state will have to deal with down the road. It's unhealthy, it's inappropriate. We don't do it in any other profession or work group, and we should not do it with firefighters. So this is actually designed to discourage bad practices and just to impose reasonable work schedules with our firefighters.
And speaking of numbers and speaking of estimations, let's talk a little bit about sports betting. Of course, just seeing mobile sports betting signed into law. Let's talk a little bit about what those expectations had been for this year, that 23.5. We're quickly approaching the FY19 end, downgraded to 11, currently at $150,000. Let's talk a little bit about how both this year that impacts, and then looking at the numbers for FY20, were those lessons learned incorporated into the FY20 budget?
Well, we will see as we go forward with the budget, but it does not entirely shock me that our expectations were not met. I thought they were a little bit optimistic when they were proposed, and they've proven to be such. With sports betting, you win some bets, you lose some bets, and we have a lot of local teams that do very well. So when our local teams do well, it's great, we all love it, but it has an impact on the gaming industry, the local gaming industry. So it doesn't surprise me, and it's something that we're going to have to look at and probably revise moving forward.
And of course, for the FY20, that number now will include mobile sports betting, and we could perhaps see it this year as well. Do we expect mobile sports betting to really have an impact per testimony that you've heard?
I mean, it's something that our citizens like to engage in, so I'm glad that it's something we've provided the opportunity for them to enjoy that leisure activity. But as far from a revenue point of view, it's probably going to be relatively neutral in the near future anyway.
And speaking of numbers, of course, the proposal in the governor's budget to legalize marijuana in the state. I had the opportunity to talk with the Director of Administration, Mike DeVies, who said that he thought those numbers looked a little more solid because having expectations from Massachusetts, knowing what medical marijuana does here. Are you comfortable with that $6 million budgeted for FY20 that's in the governor's budget?
Well, I'm not comfortable, but I'm not uncomfortable with it either. I have no gut feeling and no basis for challenging those numbers. However, it's not legal currently, and I don't know if there's going to be a policy change relative to marijuana. I've been kind of neutral, but I'm very concerned about a business industry that's concerned about their workforce. and being able to get a good qualified workforce and public safety, impaired drivers on the road, and there being no test. And our regulatory system in our process, I don't think is ready to handle legalization at this time. So I'm kind of neutral, but I have concerns. I don't want to speak for the Senate President, but I've heard that the Senate is less neutral and maybe a little more negative. If that's the case, then we're not going to achieve any revenues from marijuana, and that's probably another $8 million that we're going to have to find.
So are you saying there's a possibility that we might not actually see this session legalized?
Absolutely. Anything's possible. In order for there to be a policy change to legalize marijuana, we're going to have the appropriate regulatory system in place, ready to go, because it's very difficult. Every state has struggled with that, and we're gonna have all of the terms of the legislation and the proposal agreed upon. And quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot of discussion and a lot of agreement. I'm not convinced there's agreement that we should move forward this session. So we'll see how it goes. But absolutely, it's possible that marijuana is now legalized in this session.
Well, we're going to continue to keep an eye on that as well. Let's talk to education for a moment. Coming out of House Labor, again, Evergreen Contracts for teachers, strongly supported by the teachers union, opposed by those who say it presents a law of unintended consequences, obviously not being able to go back to the drawing board. Your take on Evergreen Contracts?
I think they're probably appropriate. I've given them a lot of thought over the years. Generally, you don't need to even address the issue. 99% of the municipalities follow that practice. So once again, this is a lot of concern over really not that significant a change, or probably no change at all, because most communities respect the agreement that they've previously entered into until a new one is agreed to. And generally speaking, with inflation, every new contract is probably higher than the last one, so it's just not oppressive to live up to the terms of the original agreement before you, in fact, negotiate the new one. Every once in a great while, a community will unilaterally impose something that the workforce deems to be oppressive, and this discussion is reintroduced and regenerated. So just to keep everybody on the same plane, we should encourage or mandate that all the communities do what 99% of them are doing anyway. And for the mayors that suggest that they're going to be stuck in an oppressive contract, we're talking about contracts that they've agreed to, they've entered into 2 or 3 years before that. So how oppressive could they really be? So I think it's probably the right way to go forward.
And let's talk on the education front about things that do have a price tag attached. The governor's proposal to expand the Rhode Island Promise. This is the free college tuition already at CCRI to Rhode Island College. Again, with budgetary constraints and hearing about how the program has been received so far at CCRI, do you anticipate this expansion to RIC this year?
I anticipate, Kate, that the Finance Committee will thoroughly study every aspect of the budget and will move forward appropriately. I am concerned that this is going to be a very difficult budget, that revenues are going to be below expectations. That being the case, and just this afternoon we talked about several revenue items that are not meeting expectations. There's a lot more of them.
Can you tell us the ones that have come up as well?
There are others. They're not coming to mind immediately, but and there's a lot of revenue sources, a lot of taxes. I've already talked about the additional surcharge tax on guns and ammunition. They are taxed at 7% currently, and that's probably appropriate because every item gets taxed the same. But guns and firearm, that's a constitutional right. It's a right to bear them, and yet we're going to propose surcharging them additional to everything else that you don't have a constitutional right to. So that's probably something that's not going to move forward, and so we have to find that revenue. Taxes on tobacco products, That's something that we have to give a lot of thought to. The convenience store industry is very concerned. Right now, we have a slight advantage over Massachusetts. This could put us at a disadvantage and actually hurt our revenues long term. The Medicaid tax is something that we have to look at. So, and that's getting a lot of resistance from the business community. So, all of those revenue items, for each one that we don't do, that's that much less revenue that we have available for the budget. So to answer your original question, let's see what we have available and let's go forward. But my speculation and guess right now is that we're probably not going to have the revenues available to create any new programs. And as you know, we have year deficits that we already have to deal with. So we're going to move forward very responsibly.
So when you say no new programs, would that possibly include at Rhode Island College, the College Promise program?
Absolutely, that's a new program. But wisdom is probably going to dictate that we should not create any new program with new spending until our year deficits are in order.
Anything else you want to share with viewers as we're here again the final week before April break, before the Assembly comes back into session?
No, we'll chat again as we get closer to passing the budget.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining this afternoon on GoLocal Live. We appreciate your time and appreciate the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate.
And we'll see you soon on GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.